Welcome everyone to our first ever installment of the Carnegie Industrial Series here at the Carnegie Historical Museum in Fairfield, Iowa. We appreciate you all showing up. This is a series in which we're highlighting industries in all of Jefferson County, not just Fairfield, but throughout the whole county. And we are pleased to have Pete Nelson here tonight. He's the founder, and he's going to tell us about the history of the Nelson Company. So thanks for joining us, Pete, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, I've got a rough slide presentation put together that will help me explain how I became qualified to start something like this, in my estimation, and some of the people that helped and was there when we started. So to begin with, the first slide, if you look, this is what's up on the third floor, and it's a display of various castings that we've made for combines, washing machines, boat trailers, variety of things. This is a gear case for a John Deere tractor, an industrial tractor. In the background is some of the history, the pictures of some of the people and the first purchase order, the quotes, the packing slips. These two certificates here assume my stock, our first stock, number one, number two. And then over on this end is our 25-year anniversary article. So if you get a chance to go upstairs, well, you'll see that. Our second slide, I'm the grandson of Swedish immigrants. This is a stone of my grandparents. My grandmother Clara and my grandfather Nels came into this country in the 1800s, mid-1800s, settled in Illinois and met, married, and their family was raised partially in Illinois and partially in Minneapolis, and then he ended up in Salina, Iowa. Everybody know where Salina is? This house is where my parents lived when I was born. Now, it looked more presentable then, I'm sure, than it does now, but it belongs to Mr. Smith, can't think of his first name, but it's right north of Tom Adams' farm. And if you clear away the junk, it's I think probably a four-room house, probably a kitchen, a dining, and 2 bedrooms, I'm guessing. Obviously no electricity or indoor plumbing. This is the first school that I went to. It's Salina School. It's no longer there. It was a very nice school. As you can see, it had a basement in it. And I started school there in 1943, and there was probably a dozen to 18 students at that time, which was an outstandingly large class for a country school. This is something I put together just for a thought provoker, home grow a business. And my background, so I could home grow my business, when I was in high school, I had machining and physics and chemistry and math, but mostly I liked machining. And Ilef Lou was a teacher. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Ilef. He was a well-known teacher and influenced a lot of people. Then, after I graduated and was going to college, I was working part-time for Fairfield Engineering, who was owned by Ron Blau. Ron Blau, to begin with, was the chief engineer of Dexter, who started Fairfield Engineering while he was still working for Dexter, kind of like what I did. I started Nelson Company while I was still working for Dexter. I worked also, when I was going to college, for John Hunt. He had a little machine shop in the corner of Fairfield Glove that made a automatic knit wrist cutting and folding machine. If any of you have a knit wrist on your jacket or your gloves, it would pull tubing through, cut it to length, and fingers on the inside would expand, and the knit wrist would be folded back on itself, and then as it come forward, it would slide into a trough that whoever was running it would take the trough when it was full and put it in a box about like so to take it to the sewers that were sewing gloves. They call them clickers because there was we had a row of 5 of them in the glove factory that we'd made, And as they run, they go clickety-click, clickety-click, clickety-click all day long. That's making net risk. In college, my advisor was Victor Rail. He was head of the mathematics department and my advisor. And I got a lot of good advice from him. But that gives you a little bit of an idea of my background. I had a lot of physics, a lot of chemistry, a lot of math. When I got out of high school, Ila Flew recommended me, Jerry Horace, Leonard Mozinski, Wishart Boy, and Don Burr to go to work for Heston and Anderson. This is by the glove company now. It's the company that makes the solar panels. But originally it was a Heston and Anderson building, started by Abner Anderson and Emil Heston. Anderson is Kent Whitney's great-grandfather or his grandfather, I'm not sure. But they made saws. We made a table saw, a jointer, a swing saw, and a lathe. And there was part of the factory was still run by overhead belts when I went to work. In fact, Fairfield Engineering bought this, and when I was about a sophomore in college and I went to work for Fairfield Engineering, that's where I went back into. And I ended up working for them after I graduated because jobs were scarce. I had two offers. I had one offer. I took one for the IRS and one for Mutual of Omaha. And IRS offered me a position down in Kentucky. I would have been a revenuer. And Mutual of Omaha was an actuary. And for some reason it didn't appeal to me. But so I ended up taking a job with Fairfield Engineering, and I worked there 15 years. During that time, I designed tools and dies. I supervised the tool room. I supervised the model shop where we took Blau's ideas in hog watering and livestock watering, and we pioneered confinement hog operations with the slatted floor and the overhead conveyors and the waters. So that's what I did. I did mostly the tool design, and then later on I did some quoting. This is my house where Sue and I lived on Pierce Street, and I started machining in the garage. I had single-phase power in there. Whoops, I did something. See how good I am at this. And see if I can get caught up here. I'm up on slide A1B. But in this garage, the reason I started the business was to machine a part for Fairfield aluminum castings. We called it an Amco elbow. It was called Amco because that's the name of the company that was the end user of it. It was a knuckle that would connect a tubing. And if you had four knuckles on one to make a square and you put an aluminum sheet in the center, you could put gauges, you could put radar screens, you could put whatever you wanted to. There were some of them used at NASA, but I don't think they were in the spaceship. I think they were in the mission control. But that's where it all started, and it started over a drink up the Elks with Merle Haney and I. Merle was president of Falco, and he had bought a foundry in Chicago and moved the patterns and this machining operation to Fairfield along with about a dozen employees. And the employees lasted about a week to a month, and they all went back to Chicago. They didn't like our style of life. So anyway, Merle said, I've got this machining business, and we can't do the quality and we can't get the quantity out. Can you help me? And I looked at it, and I thought if we tool it a different way, we'd get rid of some of the quality problems and hopefully the production would follow. So in this garage, I had 2 or 3 machines in a group of machines I'd bought from Philco Ford where I was working. That Philco Ford was a predecessor of Dexter. And so that's where it all started. And soon I had a little dog that'd come out in the garage. I think his name was Snoopy. And he'd eat it in aluminum chips. I don't know how he felt when he passed it. This was the purchase order for the machinery that I bought from Philco Ford. If you look closely, it was $1,000 I paid for all these machines. Some of them I bought them for people I were working with at Dexter who wanted maybe a lathe for their garage or a drill for their garage. So I didn't use all of them. This is the first purchase order for those castings. I got $1 a piece for these castings, and some of them I got $1.10 a piece. Here's the first packing slip of the first lot we made, and there you see there's 407, 43 of that, and 122 for a total of $588.50. But that's the first shipment of parts, and that's in 1972. So we have a company, we have it off and running, and we had correspondence, we had other quotes to other companies, so we had to have a letterhead and a logo. And these are my doodles for putting together letterhead, and I settled with this one right up here, and that's pretty close to the same way it looks today, if you're familiar with that sign in there. This is basically the first employees of the company. This is not in our garage. This is in the locker plant, but this is Ron Holt, my brother-in-law. This is me, and this is Sue, and this is Ernie McCready. Ernie took care of the maintenance and electrical. Sue took care of the office, and I was still working for Dexter, but I'd come in after 5 when I got off and give some guidance and do some work. So these are our department heads, basically. Ernie's maintenance, plant engineering, Ronnie's production, and hiring and purchasing, and I'm administrative and engineering and sales. These 3 parts here, this casting, and this gear, were made for Chore Time. Chore Time makes turkey feeding equipment, and this put together in a gearbox would assemble, and it would raise and lower the feed conveyor within a turkey housing. They'd hook a half-inch drill on it, heavy drill, and they'd run the gear and they'd run the whole system up and down to, I think, to increase the feed or decrease the feed, however they did it. This is a brake drum and hub. We made lots of those. This bottom picture is part of a picture of me and Ronnie and Ernie on Biggs Field in Chicago, and that airplane wing, Merle Miller owned that airplane for a while, and I own it now. We moved from the garage on Pierce Street see if I get caught up here. Slide A to B, we moved to Artesian Ice House in 1972. It was only in the garage for about a year, maybe 3 months. But you can see here, this is just a picture, and we're doing some doodling on the front here to decide where we want to put our company name. This is Ronnie and I and Ernie on the Biggs Field in Chicago, standing in front of the airplane. He was there for a tool show. We're in the Artesian Ice House now, and we're starting to expand. And as we expanded, we would knock out a wall. If you was ever in the old ice house, when you could rent a locker and put your meat in a locker, they would slaughter your steer, your hog, process it, wrap it, put it in your own tray. Well, these were all in maybe 5 different rooms that were all individually refrigerated. And as we expanded and needed more room, we'd knock out a wall. So it was made out of cork and plaster, and we'd knock a hole with a maul underneath one of the walls and run a log chain through, then hook it onto my pickup, and we'd rip the bottom of the wall out and then push it and let it fall. That was all well and good, but those walls held up the ceiling too. My old uncle was running a milling machine and smoking his cigarette and thinking about other things, and all of a sudden a big part of the ceiling come down behind him, about scared him to death. So this is Bob Christ. Bob was our tool engineer at that time and head of the tool room. Stanley Parsons was head of our quality control. And on the background here, you can see all these sheets stuck up on the wall. Those are what we call X-bar R charts. And they're a statistical way of determining if the machine that's running the parts is capable of holding the tolerances that you're asking. It'll tell you how far in to the tolerance you are. X-bar R charts. Stan had a ton of them. This is what we made, 58 different machine castings for this line of combines, starting back in probably 76, and we're still making those today. Not the same parts, but at one time we were making 58 different castings. We were the biggest machining shop that they had. This is Rich Foreman. He's one of our longtime employees, retired now. He was foreman over the machine shop, day shift, night shift for maybe 20 years. He's enjoying his retirement now. Here's some pictures of some of our employees. This is Kurt Harris. This is my dad. This is Doug Danielson, John Weishire, who later became our president, Bobby Christ, Stan Parsons, and this is John Danielson. Everybody's gone on this picture but Bobby Christ, John, and Kurt. This Mickey Kerr and John Weishire, Mickey was working for Dexter, and I think he was congratulating John on one of our anniversaries. This is what a tool and die set looks like. We were making, in our tool room, custom tool and die sets for other companies. This happened to be one for Fairfield Engineering, and it made a lid for a hog water. In a confinement house, you've got a little hog cup that the water comes into, and you like to keep those covered because the hogs like to crap in them. And so you like to keep them clean. Well, if you look at it, this triangular piece is about the size of the lid for a cup. And you'd feed through a strip of metal, and the first hit would cut it into a triangle and trim the corners. The second would form it in a U shape, and the third would complete the form and cut the tabs, and it'd slide down in the box. So you go bang, 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 bang. And every time you hit it, you got a completed part. This was one of the ones when Bobby Christ and John Danielson took off on their own and bought Booker's shop over in Libertyville, and they were going to take the unfinished dies with them, and I said, no, I'm going to finish them. So my son and I went in at night and Saturdays, and we completed building these dies. And later I talked to him. He worked for Maytag for a while. I talked to his boss, and he said he's one of our best engineers because he's not afraid to get his hands dirty, and he knows. I think he was supervisor of their tool room for a while. We moved from the ice house, we called it, on Grimes to where we are right now in 1993. And we hired a guy to come in. He had lift trucks and 4 or 5 semis, and we moved the whole shop in 2 days. And had a layout per scale of the new plant. And as we moved it from one plant, we set it in exactly the same place, and everyone would come along and hook it up, and there'd be a guy running it just within hours. So we never lost any production. This shows one of our machines. This particular machine ran the big brake drum and hubs, and it weighed 40,000 pounds, I think. Here's Gus Schaus and Roger Voorhees, who bought the building from us, and that was them taking work of it. This is the present building where we are right now. There's 70-some thousand square feet in there. 120,000 square feet. If you want to get an idea of that, a 35 by 35 room is 1,250 square feet. This is 100 times bigger than that. You can put 100 35 by 35 foot rooms in this plant. Here's our quality control head expressing his opinion of some of the quality of the parts we brought him. It's Stan Parsons. This is Bobby Kessel. Bob worked for us part-time and Hy-Vee for a long time, and he's running a gear hob. A gear hob would cut a smaller version of this, cut teeth in a gear. This is what we cut the teeth for the gearbox that elevated the turkey feeder up and down. This lady's running the tool grinder in the tool room. And here's another one of our employees down below here. This is me and the purchasing agent for Case Combine, and we're getting a preferred customer award. And he was instrumental in all the work we did for Case. We become close friends, and he would call and say, we've got a hot job coming through engineering that the prints won't be released for another week, and it won't be approved for another 2 weeks, and we need it in 2 weeks. Would you start right now without a purchase order? And we said, yeah, we will. Give us your unreleased prints, and you promised to pay our bill. And so that's where we did a lot of the work, on a handshake with Case, G.I. Case. Here's some of the parts. This is a pulley used in the combine. This is a fan that was used to blow some of the dust. This is part of an adjusting mechanism. This is part of what we call the wobble box. This sits on the frame of a combine head and runs the sickle bar. The wobble box sits on top of this. These two gears here go in this gearbox here, and that's a feeder reverser. It fits on the front of the combine. If you get too much crop in there, or it's too green, it plugs, and you'll kick this into gear and run it backwards, it spits it out. They don't use this style anymore, but they still use one. This is a gearbox back here that ran a stock chopper. It fit on the back of the combine. Or no, it fit up in the combine, but when they had a stock chopper on it, this is the gearbox they used. This ring would be part of the assembly that the big unload auger on the side of the combine, when your hopper's full, you swing it around. That's part of it. So that ring is about that big around. A pulley. This pulley would run in conjunction with this gearbox. And the pulley has a taper on it. As it spreads, the belt goes farther and farther down, so the ratio changes. And as it comes together, the pulley belt comes out bigger and bigger to change the ratio. So it's a variable speed drive. We developed, you can see, this is an off-center ring cut in here, a groove. And we invented some mechanism on an old lathe to cut that. They had been having that cut out in California with an end mill. And it took them about 10 minutes to do one, and it took us about a minute. But it's a mechanism that the tool goes in and out every time the part goes around, and it's also on a taper. That's a tapered pulley, so it goes in and out on a taper. It's very simple, 2 angles, but nobody could think about it. nobody could think of it yet. Here's a feeder reverser. This is the part, this little bitty kid here, I was going to bring one, forgot about. That's what we started the company making. That's a Amco elbow. These are boat trailer hubs. This is an internal part on the combine, as are these. But you can imagine making 58 different ones of those times 30 per day. This was one of our products for a while, this golf cart. It didn't go over too well, made 40 and luckily got out of it without losing too much money. This was one of the slogans. John Weishauer came up. He won our contest. Teamwork. Alone we can do so little, and in this slide together we can do a lot. But this old uncle here that just about got brained with a piece of ceiling. Yeah, this is my sister Karen running a press brake, doing some sheet metal. She loved to work in the shop. She's valedictorian of her class, but she wanted to work out in the plant. John Weishauer became our president. Doug Danielson was tool maker. This is John, and I think that's a guy by the name of Sampson. He was a tool maker. Here's the other part of that slogan. John Weishauer again, Ernie McCready, Doug Danielson, I believe. That's Ernie and Ronnie, Stan Parsons. This was our 25th anniversary, and you can see we're in the new plant, and here's some of the castings that you've already seen and we've talked about. In 2003, we sold the company to the employees. It's called an ESOP. And this is the stockholders, with the exception of Sue's not in this picture. My sister Karen, Ronnie, and I, we had bought Ernie out at this point. And this is the guy that was our advisor. He put together Dexter's ESOP. That's how I got to know him. And this is our attorney over in Peoria that did the documents. This is about 1990 early. There's 76 people in this picture, and that's our day shift. And Ronnie, who just come in, said at that time we had 142 employees.
Yeah.
But that was on 3 shifts. We were doing 3 shifts at that point. Here's a sample of what our machine is. This particular operator is the same in all 3 pictures. Kevin Foreman, he's one of our longtime employees. But this is a vertical machining center, and he's machining this red gearbox. And over here, this is a turning center, and it's got a big fixture on it, and it turns and bores these big bores in it. And it bores it in a line so that everything runs real precisely. Here he is at the tool crib getting some tools out of the crib from that lady you seen sharpening tools. She would have issued him the tools that he used on his job. So our company, we built from within. We'd hire people that was capable and had a good personality, and then they'd learn job, and hopefully they would progress up and do progressively more complicated work, which was apparent in that Ronnie became president after being plant superintendent and running some of the Amco handles to begin with, and John Weishauer did the same, and so did our President Bobby Bowman. He came up through the ranks. Ronnie didn't have to do everything. He was boss. I was working at Dexter, and Ronnie was running the company. This particular unit is what we call a 3D printer. And you can take a blueprint and give this machine commands off that blueprint, and it'll make things like this. These are composite of something, probably plastic. But the reason why we want to do this, you can't use these in any kind of machine because they're plastic. But when you get an order, we get an order to make a machine casting, we've got to order the pattern so the foundry can make the casting. And it takes maybe 3 weeks or more to make the pattern. Then the foundry's got to sample it, then we've got to approve it. And during that time, we can't make our tooling because we don't have anything to put on our hands to see where we're going to clamp, what we're going to do. So when you make these, you get the exact thing you have as a casting, and you use it to make the machine tooling so that the patterns and the machine tooling get done about the same time. And when you get your sample casting, you take it over and you put it in the machine right away and you get a sample casting. This is a little more complicated, but it shows you what it's capable of. It'll make the holes and everything. That's a 3D printer. This is a 2-spindle vertical machine, and these 2 parts here are this part here, made out of iron. And they're being machined. One is being machined on the face and the OD, and the other one has had teeth broached in the center, and it's slipped on to a chucking fixture, and it's faced on the face. Here it's shown being gripped by chuck jaws. This is the raw casting, and here's the teeth a bit broached on the internal bore here, and you can see the expanding collet has teeth on it also to power it so it doesn't slip. This is a broaching machine. It's just a big hydraulic cylinder that pulls this bar here. It pulls it right through the casting, and on this bar are proceedingly higher teeth. Each tooth is about 10 to 15 thousandths taller than the next one.
Yeah, not quite that.
So every time it pulls through, it curls a little chip 15 thousandths thick out of the width of here. So every time a tooth goes through, the one right behind it goes 15 thousandths deeper. So to go and cut the teeth on this, you need 40 teeth. You pull 40 teeth through, and then it's got a section of finish. So they only take 5 thousandths or so. But this bar, I think, is probably $8,000–9,000 tool.
Yeah,
That's the cost of it, because it's that big around and it's half the length of this table, and it's precision. Call it a broach bar. Here you see it in this end goes through that hole into an automatic clamp that pulls it on through the bar. This is Ronnie at my retirement, or maybe it's Ronnie at his retirement. I think that's Ronnie at his retirement. Let me get caught up here. What is that, A9?
no, I had dark colored hair there, it must have been years.
That's 9. I retired, 2003. That's when and I became chair of the board. Ronnie's taken over as president. At that time, we were making this Amco part, gearbox. I think you've seen these in one of the other slides, but we're turning it over to Ronnie. Now here, Ronnie's retired, and he's turned it over to John Weishauer. John started out as a machine operator, tool operator, sales manager, worked his way up. Here I'm congratulating John on his retirement, and we hired Tim Bauer to replace John, and Tim worked for a year or two and left for a different job, and we've elevated Bob Bowman into that position. He's our president right now. This is our 50th anniversary. It was 2022. And some of the guys we couldn't get out of there, so we had to bring the sheriff in to get him out the door. This happens to be John's father-in-law, Bart Richmond, who's president, or is sheriff. This is just a picture of one of the machines, and these castings are being loaded. I think they were air tested. They were an air filter bracket for a big John Deere end loader that had so much pressure on the oil system, they had to have valves to reduce the pressure. This round piece is where the filter canister went. But this is the type of machine that we ran them on. And one operator would run maybe 2 or 3 machines. Here's, I don't know what we give. We might have give $500,000 to this machine. It's a horizontal machining center. And we started, this type of production was new to us. We'll show some more of it in a minute. This is our measuring machine, a coordinate measuring machine. Jason Engel runs it. And this part right here is something he's going to measure with this stylus. And he'll click on each characteristic that he wants to measure on this part, enter it in the computer, and then he hits a button, and the next one it measures automatically. He brings it over and touches the part, hits the button, and then it goes ahead, and he just watches it measure it. And it prints out on the computer, out on a printer, prints in red the out of tolerance characteristics, and if it's in tolerance, it's black, so you don't have to worry about it. That's called a CMM, Computer Coordinate Measuring Machine. Here's our shipping area. Here's some big pulleys. You can see we've got boxes of parts ready to go in the semi. 2 semi loads a week. This is a big vertical machine with a chuck. It'll turn 15-inch diameter, maybe 20. This is a vertical machine. Here's the tooling cutter. And this is a rotary fixture. That fixture would turn by degrees and be accurate within minutes. So if you want to go from 90 degrees here to 90 degrees there, it's right on the money. This is a new horizontal machining center. You see the chuck and the tools go in this carrier. It'd be a lathe. This is a tombstone. This would be in that $500,000 lathe. There's one of these here and one on the other side of this barrier. The parts go in here being loaded by the operator, while on the other side of the barrier, the machine is cutting, drilling and tapping and doing whatever's necessary. Here's 2 of those smaller machines. These are not near as expensive, but the one that we were unloading, the expensive one, is one that started us on this concept. In this cabinet, there'll be 50 different tools that are already loaded, and they're set to size. So when you put in a different part in here, you put in the fixture and you call up the program for that part, and it automatically gets the tools that are preset for it. So the first part's a good part. And he doesn't have to wait there until the inspector lays it out. You're ready to go. That's an old vertical machine. We bought 3 of these for $20,000, but they're maybe 20 years old. This is Ronnie Holt, in case you don't know him, walked in. He was one of the first employees. There's a newer lathe. It's running one of these big tapered pulleys. You can see the taper. It goes from there over to here, and this spins and tells you where it's out of balance. And then we drill holes in the periphery of this to bring it back in balance. Here's 2 fixtures running a Dexter bearing housing for their washing machine. This side will be drilled and tapped, and then as it's turned over, the other end is drilled and tapped. Then it goes into a box. With this machine, a lathe is running to do these bores and faces. This is our 50th anniversary with me and Bob in a news article. And that's all I have. Is there any questions on how we started or what we started to take care of another company in town. And I was kind of like Ronnie Blau. I started my company after working for Dexter and filling a need. And when it got big enough, why, I left and spent full time with it. And there's lots of companies in town. Fairfield Aluminum, the Hunts, Jack Ward, Jack and Bill Ward and Tom Hunt went from Dexter, that was their family's business, to start Fairfield Aluminum Castings. So Fairfield's got a history of that. So they're still running, I hope. They were this afternoon. We just went to a retirement party for one of our employees. It was 33 years.
33 years.
33 years. So. Questions, anybody? I guess that's it.
Well, good. You know what? Starting out our new Carnegie Industrial Series, this is exactly how we wanted to start it, because it kind of gives a process of, even though we're going to have businesses that are here and still running, and they'll be here long after we're both gone and we're all gone, or businesses that have been in town. I mean, Fairfield was a city of industry. That's what we were known for back in the early days, and it's really cool to have Pete come in and tell us a history of the Nelson Company, just because the way things were and how much prices and things have changed, and how you can do 3D printing now. It's evolving over time, and it's part of the series that and how we want it to be presented through here. I want to thank Pete so much for coming in. Thanks to his wife Sue as well for coming in and kickstarting this new series of the Carnegie Industrial Series. And we're going to start covering all industries, or many industries, in Jefferson County, and that's one of our goals with this new series. And we're going to have it every other month. We're going to continue to have our Carnegie Farm series as well, and we're just going to slice and dice and put them in between. So I want to thank everyone who made it out tonight. We really appreciate you being here. Thanks of those of you watching in the Carnegie Historical Museum YouTube channel. We ask you, if you like this presentation, to like it and hit the bell notification and subscribe, and so you can see all of our new content that's coming up. We want to thank the Fairfield media for coming in here and filming this for us. Please also like us on Facebook and X, and you can find all those at our new website, CarnegieHistoricalMuseum.com. And if you would like to visit us, our hours are Tuesday through Friday, and at 112 South Main in Fairfield, Iowa, just one block south of the Fairfield Square. And we can't wait to see you at the museum. Thank you.